And here we go. So welcome. This is part 2 of the full set review for Edge of Eternities. And up first is green. So here at the Scuffle stream, we use the Scuffle review system. That's my personal review system. I will give every card a rating from 1 to 10. A 1 is a card you should never play. A 2 is a card you should try not to play. 3 is replaceable. It's replacement level. 4 is solid. 5 is strong. 6 is a card you'll always play in a given color or deck. 7 is something that pulls you into that color or deck. 8 is a card you'll do some work to play. Maybe you'll splash it. Maybe you'll change your deck around or construct things a little bit differently. 9 is something that you're this color now. Like it just changes everything. And a 10 is a card you will always play. They're very rare, usually artifacts. Not always, but often. In addition to the average final rating, I give everything a floor. That's the worst a card will usually be. A ceiling, that's the best a card will usually be. And then an amount of effort required to bridge that gap. So that's build around, synergies, sideboards. You'll have to put in work to bring cards from their floor to their ceiling. And a lot of cards, if a card has a very low ceiling, maybe it's not worth the effort. If a card has a very high ceiling but a low rating, then you might see what it takes to get it there. So in addition to all of the card ratings, I'll also give a quick overview of the color pairs and generally how to approach and think about the color at the beginning. So for green, first we have red-green landfall. Very generally, you need to find the payoffs first, the cards that care about landfall. So Tannock Memorial Ensign is a signpost uncommon for that. That's the best example of something that really rewards you for landfall. A few lands will ping, but if you're drawing a card every turn, you're usually going to win. You need your payoffs first, then landers. There's only one card that really does traditional ramping in green this time around. Mostly it's things that make landers, and those are the artifacts that you pay to sacrifice, go get a land. You want a lot of them because they're lands you can bank for after you have your Tannock. Like, they are going to do better for you than a rampant growth most of the time. They're functionally a rampant growth, but they get to sit and play for later until you have your payoffs. So payoffs first, then landers, then bombs. You can take your bomb cards in pretty much any color. As long as they're expensive 6, 7, 8 mana, landers will let you splash them. So splashing looks different in this format, especially with landers. Red-green landfall is very good at doing it. Even the aggressive versions of red-green landfall are good at splashing. And then blockers. This is landers. The mechanic, the tokens will take time. You have to generate that time. And green has a lot of very good blockers. Red doesn't. Red has a lot of pretty good removal, but you'll have to go to green for your blockers, and you do need those to generate the time to go get your lands. Once you have that time, you'll start to snowball pretty quick. If you're ahead 3 lands and you're still generating landers, you're going to win the game. There's not a lot of ways to repeatedly make landers without a lot of effort, but they exist. So generally in red-green, you need fewer win conditions. The winning will happen when you have a big mana advantage, and you don't have to pick your win conditions really aggressively because you can play your blue 6/6 7 mana flyer in your red-green deck. And with black and with white cards. You do need a finisher, but you can find it a little bit later. And you can also approximate a finisher with enough landfall or by going more aggressive red, or even just by using the trample available in green. This is not correct. I'll have to revisit that for red. I don't know what happened. All right, up next. Green-white counters. So there's only a few payoffs for having counters on everything, but that's okay because being larger is a payoff in and of itself. You get to play normal magic, mid-range magic, attack, hit them hard, and you need your payoffs first. Then you need your removal. You have to take your removal a little bit higher in green-white. Not because it's not there, but because it's more specific. So green removal tends to require specific creatures in play. White removal tends to be situational, and your deck will change a lot with the kinds of cards in it across every color. But especially in green-white, your removal is going to be a lot more coded to the kind of deck you're trying to play. If you're trying to play with lots of creatures or play a very late game, your removal is going to look really different. If you're a deck that floods the board with 5 creatures, or a deck that eventually wins by grinding the game out, the removal you want will change. So you need your payoffs first, then your removal, then invasion. You need pretty Evasion's just incredibly powerful. There are so many of these cards like Kalia that when they enter or attack, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control, and you have diminishing returns on just sizing a creature up, putting them all in your 6/6, 7/7, 8/8. But if you have lots of evasive creatures, they grow really well. And then the creatures that generate the counters. So both in green and in white, there's a pretty even divide. It's easy to see this is a creature that has a +1/+1 counter on it. So a 2-mana 1/1, when it comes into play, put a +1/+1 counter on it, is functionally the same as a 2-mana 2/2 in most situations. But there's enough of them that you can pick them up a little later, and when you're doing green white, you just will take the 2/2 with a counter over the 2/2 without a counter. It's not hard, you'll see it happen. The counters, the creatures with the +1/+1 counters, are mostly incidental, and you want to value the keywords, like value the +1/+1 counter keywords, just not too much. Your size will just happen. The green creatures are already pretty large, and there's enough ways to distribute counters that you can make your creatures slightly larger than the opposing creatures fairly often. You also do kind of want combat tricks in this format. There's not very many combat tricks. So being able to protect one of your creatures that you've invested in for 1 mana is pretty valuable. And I think like there's only one white combat trick at Combat. There's only one. And I think this is the first time in a long time we've seen that happen. It's not a bad thing. You just have to value them a bit. Like it would be, I usually only do 4 of these, 4 different priorities because it's easier to hit for. But 5th priority is combat tricks. So up next, green-black graveyards. This is the least graveyard-centric version of green-black graveyards we've had. Most sets have some version of green-black graveyard, some way to use the graveyard. It's just so inherently tied into black's identity, and green and black together recycle. You turn... Like, death is not an inherently bad thing. Death is a part of life, and the Golgari color pair reflects that really well. So, you need, because of the lack of graveyard synergies available, there's only really one card that says, have a big graveyard. There's no, Hollow Marauder that costs 1 less for each creature card in your graveyard style effect. But... So it changes kind of how graveyard synergies work. Rather than be something where you just need any random creature in your graveyard payoffs are more valuable as a card selection tool, which means that if you're going to get into the green-black graveyard deck, you need to find power first. You do have access to a lot of self-mill, not very much self-mill. You have access to powerful self-mill in the form of cards like the Broodtender, green and a black for a 2/3, and when it enters, mill 3 cards, and then it reanimates. And that's much more valuable in this set as a way to find what you need than cheat something powerful into play. So power first, then recursion, and then mill, and I'm including surveil in that. There's not much mill, but there's a lot of surveil, and then your removal. Green and black together have so much good removal in this set. You need your card selection more than you need your card advantage, because there's only a few giants. And even the creatures that are 6 or 7 mana in this set have ways to be cheaper, and you can just cast them off of landers. So you want rares. Like green-black wants access to rares because they're so good at recurring them and hitting you with the same rares over and over again. But there's very little inherent synergy. There's still a strong color pair. It's just not really an archetype that matters. It is powerful colors doing the strong thing together. I now think green is the best color in the set. And green-black gets to protect the green power cards with good black removal and card selection and card advantage. I do think this might be the best archetype in this set. I don't know if I want to count green-black as the best archetype in the set because it requires rares, but the rares available in green are so good. The rares available in black are like pretty average, but if you're just doing powerful green creatures with good black removal, you'll win. Oh, and black card advantage. Then finally, we've got blue-green ramp classic. You see it all the time, but it's a new take on it because we're using landers instead of different creatures. It's less fragile. So you need to take your ramp spells first, and then your blockers, because you need to stay alive and generate time to use your landers. Then you need your payoffs or monsters. So Biomech Engineer is 8 mana, draw 2 cards, make it 2/2 colorless robot token. You need cards like this. They don't necessarily need to be powerful activated abilities. You can do big expensive creatures or big expensive spacecraft, or there's other strong activated abilities, but you need the payoffs and monsters next. And then finally you need your removal. Green and blue, they have a lot of removal and they have a lot of card selection. You get to substitute a lot of the actual removal spells for blockers. So you do need it, but you don't need to pick it quite as high as some of the other color pairs. You need to, and then figure out what's worth splashing. You can splash any large card or spell that you want, but you need to figure it out pretty quickly. And then you need to identify your weaknesses. So a lot of these archetypes, you can just put the powerful cards in a deck together. In green and blue, the difference between a deck that loses to your opponent's enchantment-based removal, or loses to their powerful cards, or loses to your opponent going wide with an army and pumping the team, is going to drastically affect your picks. Counter spells are pretty good when your opponent's going wide, because you don't care about their small creatures until they put a +1/+1 counter on each of them. When your opponent is just ramping into a single powerful threat, a little bit of removal goes a long way. You're going to need to pick that higher. All right, first green card. Atmospheric Greenhouse. 4 and a green for an artifact spacecraft. When this spacecraft enters, put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control with station, and at 8+ counters, it has flying and trample. So if you have a huge board, maybe because the board is stalled out or it's been back and forth for a while, then you will grow your whole team immediately, and you can station this right away. If you don't, it's going to be pretty average and feel pretty weak, and eventually it'll become a 5/4 flying trample. You want a lot of bodies here, but turning your entire board into the thing that a lot of green cards want to reward you for, and a lot of white cards you want to reward for you, while also just growing them all, can be really strong. So if I'm going wide and putting enough creatures on board, then I'm pretty happy to play out the greenhouse. Otherwise, it's going to not do what you want it to do. So I gave it a 4 with a floor of 3. That's if it puts a couple counters out, and then you have to station it over time. And then the ceiling of 6 is if you've got a huge board and also just 1 stations. So 4, 3, 6, medium effort. Up next, we have Biosynthetic Burst. That's 1 and a green for an instant. A lot of abilities. Put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. It gains reach, trample, indestructible until end of turn, and untap it. So that is 1, 2, 3, 4 keywords and a +1/+1 counter. We are going a little crazy with combat tricks. Combat tricks are already a little bit better in this set than usual, mostly because there's so few of them. There's very few combat tricks that make your creatures slightly larger. You will always see me value combat tricks that give indestructible and or hexproof a little bit higher, because they let you dodge removal spells in addition to winning a combat trick. So this is protection and a combat trick. Because it untaps, it is also going to be a little more valuable than other combat tricks, because if you're stationing or tapping for a different cost, there's a lot of things that do that. Being able to untap it means that you get to set up a trick better, but you get to set up a trap block better and use this like a real removal spell. You get to trap block your opponent's flyer. You get to also, on attack, hit a lot harder, because Surprise Trample on a 6/7 reach there's a 6/7 reach in the set. Being able to give that trample will give you a win all at once. This is just a really strong trick. It's pushed already and contextually very strong. You can also station something twice in 1 turn with this, Dawn. The lack of hexproof is notable, but it doesn't matter as much as usual. There's only 1 instant speed trick that exiles. There's only 1 instant speed spell that exiles. It is a little bit weaker against blue because there's 2 good blue bounce spells as well. So all that together, I gave this a 5 with a ceiling of 5, and it's usually going to play pretty close to that ceiling. I think it's got diminishing returns, but this will provide more protection than usual, kill more things than usual. The reach, the trample, indestructible, untap, and counter are all relevant in more situations than usual contextually within this set. I don't usually bump up a trick this high, but I gave it a 5. So Biosynthetic Burst, 5/3/5, low effort. Love the card. I'll take this over a lot of removal spells in this set. Blooming Stinger. Sorry you visited this one a few times. This is not a set where Death Touch is inherently powerful. There's no really great way to make a creature ping. Like, there's a lot of bites and fights, but there's no great way to make creatures ping, and there's no creatures that you have to punch through or else. Like, there's no creatures that you have to enable these attacks. It's still fine. It's a Death Toucher, but without something like Fight On to pick up 2 cards and really benefit from having the extra cards, this is a 2-mana 2/2 that will trade, and that's solid, but it doesn't really feed most game plans. If I am stalling, or if I have a lot of landers, if I need to take some time and buy myself some time, then I'm really happy with the Blooming Stinger, and it does combo with a lot of individual cards. There's quite a few cards that you're happy giving Death Touch, but it's still a pretty marginal upside, and this is a fairly high-powered set. You will never, don't be upset if this is the 2-drop that you have, but you're going to start to see how much the 2-drops feed a game plan as we go. So the blue 1/3 that draws a card, when it hits them, you just don't need it. You'd rather just cast 2 spells. Like, you can give it Death Touch with this on turn 4, but if you're giving Death Touch with this on turn 4, you're also playing another 2-drop, and it's already unblockable anyway. Yeah. Ooh, up next, our first really powerful green card. Broodguard Elite, X green for a 0/0 creature insect knight. This creature enters with X +1/+1/+1 counters on it. When this creature leaves the battlefield, put its counters on target creature you control and warp for X and a green. This is a really cool card. So if you... It's not when it dies, it's when it leaves. When it leaves for any reason, you put its counters on something else. That means they can't really stop it. So this is, on one turn, put X counters on a thing. On the next turn, it comes in with X counters. It is a little bit weaker because it doesn't get the counters until the end step normally, but there's so many good ways to sacrifice this that if you need the counters now, you can green X and then sacrifice it. So it just ends up being a huge amount of power and a huge way to use lots of mana, but landers are a thing. You can generate so much mana in this format that having an X spell like this ends up being exactly what you want to do, and it's very flexible. I like this card a lot. I think it's really strong. So I gave it a 7. This might be a little high. The fact that you don't get the counters until end step means it doesn't actually enable an attack. So I might need to drop this to a 6, but I really want to play with it. I think it's so cool. I guess you're never paying 5 mana for a 3/3 or 6 mana for a 4/4 and being happy about it. And you have to tap out twice. I need to lower this. I talked myself down on it. It's still very good, but it's not the game-ending or splashable spell that I want it to be. So, Broodguard Elite, 6 average, floor of 6, ceiling of 6, low effort. Close Encounter, 1 and a green for an instant. As an additional cost to cast this spell, choose a creature you control or a warped creature card you own in exile. Close Encounter deals damage equal to the power of the chosen creature or card to target creature. So this is a set where it's very difficult to kill something for only 2 mana in any color. Green is one of the only ways to kill most things for only 2 mana, and size matters a lot. There's a lot of 6/6s, there's a lot of 5/7s, and 5/5s. So being able to deal with your threat for 2 mana and then activate a lander or play another spell on the same turn is really strong. It's not free. You do need some cards with warp, and you need some relatively large cards with warp, and some death touchers or just large creatures ahead of the curve, which is a lot of, for Close Encounter to be strong. but you get to cast it, and then if you're using a warped creature, you get to mitigate a lot of the risk that bites usually have. So the risk of a bite is always, I try and make my creature deal damage to your creature. In response, you kill my creature, and then I get 2 for 1. It's just a loss. So being able to target something that you can't interact with, like a warped creature, mitigates a lot of the risk. I do think you need the warped creatures to get the maximum value out of this, but it's a really strong removal spell in this set specifically. So I gave it a 6 average, floor of 4, ceiling of 6, low effort. Really cool card, and the removal in green is kind of stellar. Okay, diplomatic relations. So this one we have to talk about a little bit. It has already been eroded. I'm sad about it. I think they should have left the misprint. So diplomatic relations, 2 and a green for an instant. Target creature gets +1/+0 and gains vigilance until end of turn. It deals damage equal to its power to target creature an opponent controls. It has been eroded to target creature you control gets +1/+0 and gains vigilance until end of turn. And the way it was written before is you can make a creature have relations with itself. You can make it punch itself or a different creature they control. Really sad about it. I think that it was clearly a mistake from the beginning, but they should have left it. I think they should have left the mistake in and accepted that green has a murder now. Like, I think they just didn't want creatures having relations with themselves. I get it, but I'm sad about it. So this is a powerful removal spell in green anyway. It's +1/+0 and bite a creature at instant speed is strong. I don't really know why they did both of these in the same set. But being the +1/+0 means that it kills a few more things, and being instant speed is great, and the vigilance is relevant. Vigilance is good in this format. Like, I have talked about it a few times, including yesterday, but being able to attack and then station a vehicle or station a spacecraft, or attack and then tap for mana. There's a lot of tap abilities. You can even, in blue-green gets to steal a creature, untap it with blue, and then give it vigilance a few times, which I'm pretty excited about. It's not free, but it's easier than you'd think. So I gave diplomatic relations a 5 average with a floor of 3 and a ceiling of 5, low effort. All right, Drix Fatemaker. This is a really cool card. So 3 and a green for a 3/2 Drix Wizard. When this creature enters, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature. Each creature you control with a +1/+1 counter on it has trample, and it has warp for 1 and a green. So broken down, this is a 4 mana 4/3 with that grants trample, or a 6 mana 5/4 that grants trample to 2 things. It is a strong card. Green has a counter theme, but even if you're not on the counter theme, just the option of being able to warp this early and then cast it late is pretty nice. It's a little awkward because this warp 2, you're not going to have a target for it. You can't warp it onto, unless you have a 1-drop. So 1-drops make this pretty good, and this is a 6. This is one of the better cards in a green-white counters deck if you have the counters payoffs, but there's not very many. This is not an inherently powerful thing. It's just your deck is not that hard to build to take advantage of this. But the big green things really want trample, especially in all of the ramp decks, and the green-white deck really wants the counters. If you have a few stations lying around, it's pretty good. And this is another example of cards not being archetypally powerful. The cards are more combo-y. Like, it matters what cards you pair with this, not what your archetype is. Yes, if you get to 1-drop, warp, 3-drop, cast, it's very strong. It's also really good. A lot of the monsters, the big creatures in green, don't trample on their own. So being able to grow them 1 and give them trample is really nice. Oh, and it's really great with the Blooming Stinger. You can Blooming Stinger to give something Death Touch, and then also give the thing you gave Death Touch +1 and trample for the turn, and then later cast this for 4. Edge Rover, green, just green, for a 2/2 with reach. When this creature dies, each player creates a land or token. The Edge Rover is difficult to play with. So 1 mana 2/2 reach, very powerful, and combos with lots of little cards, things that you're happy to see. You need to make sure that you can use a lander better than your opponent. Giving your opponent a lander is bad. A land is just good, especially early, and if you play this on turn 1 and then your opponent breaks it on turn 2 or times breaking it right, they can very likely use the lander better than you. So the reason that it has such a high effort value is that it's difficult. You have to build, and you have to make sure that the 1 mana 2/2 is worth it for you and that you can use the lander better. But you're likely to be able to use the lander better in green as long as you're building it correctly, or not super aggressive. Love this card. It's really cool and going to be fun to play with. In the right deck, it is a 6, and you have to consciously construct that deck. You will have games where your opponent just doesn't kill this and you have a 1 mana 2/2 that they can't do anything about. So I gave Edge Rover a 4 with a floor of 3, ceiling of 6, high effort. You're going to have really fun games where you can't decide whether or not you should kill this. It could be better than that. I always worry. My opponent is going to have more ability to crack this than I am. They're going to have more ability to decide when it dies than I am. Yeah, it might be easier to use than I thought. Let's change the effort to a medium and bump it up a point. I think I'm lowering the floor, though. When it's bad, it's going to feel so bad. Green doesn't have artifacts payoffs, just land payoffs. This is a good question. Up next is Eumidian Terra Botanist. It is 1 and a green for a 2/3 insect druid with landfall, gain 1 life. Whenever land you control enters, gain 1 life. This is just powerful and efficient. If you play it on turn 2, it will usually gain 3 to 5 life over the course of the game, possibly more, and that life gain is very relevant. You need to buy this time, and it's on an already just better creature. This blocks most of the 2-drops. There's a few 2-drops that are also 2/3s, and then they'll bounce off of each other. But if you're trying to grind or make the game last, then this is a very good card for you. If you're not trying to grind, it's actually just average. So I'm going to go ahead and drop the floor to a 4, but it's a strong card that I'm happy to play in most green decks. I do love the art on this Carl. All right, up next. Damn it, I keep doing that. All right. So I gave the Terra Botanist a 5 average, floor of 4, ceiling of 6, medium effort. All right, up next, use social engineering. I love that they keep trying these effects because this is an inherently weak card and style that you can pour effort into and really get a lot out of. So use social engineering, 3 green for an enchantment with landfall. Whenever land you control enters, create a 2/2 colorless robot artifact creature token, and it has warp for 1 and a green. So it's a little awkward still. Usually this card type is very weak because you'll play it on turn 5, and that's your best case scenario, is play it on turn 5, turn 6 make it 2/2, turn 7 make it 2/2, turn 8 make it 2/2. That's pretty weak, but these cards always have a deck that they go in where you can put out a bunch of creatures, a bunch of lands all at once, and then it's good. It's just a lot of work. So with this card, the best case scenario without landers is on turn 3, you pay 3 mana for a 2/2 because you warp this for 2, then play your land and make your 2/2, and you're not likely to be able to use that in land again. Or on turn 4, with landers, you get to warp this, play a land, landfall, crack your lander, landfall, make 2 2/2s. Turn 5, you now have 6 or 7 mana, which means that you can cast this, play a land, make a 2/2, and then cast another spell. That's a lot of work. It's very difficult. You need a lot of landers, but it is achievable. So I gave this a 3 average, floor of 3, ceiling of 6. And high effort. This is something you have to build around. If you're a dedicated lander deck, then yes, you do want this card. But otherwise, it's you can't just cram this into your deck. This is something you have to build around. This is a cool build around. I really like it, but you have to build around it for it to be something you want. Right. Turn 3 lander is not an easy thing. What you'll find a lot with you social engineering is you'll feel like you have the right deck for it. You'll have the landers, and you'll get to make 2 or 3 2/2s with it, but it's going to feel so awkward because you won't actually get to turn 4, warp this land, crack a lander, but you'll get to do it on turn 5 or turn 6, and you'll warp it and do the thing, and then you'll cast it and do the thing. And it'll happen. It's just it's going to be very difficult. All right, our next Fungal Colossus. This is a really cool one. I say that about every card. 6 and a green for a 5/5 creature fungus beast. This creature costs X less to cast, where X is the number of differently named lands you control. So just to break this down, if you are a 2-color deck, this is a 5 mana 5/5. If you somehow have 6 forests in play, it's going to be 6 mana. That's almost never going to happen. So the floor of this is a 5 mana 5/5. However, there is only one non-basic land below rare in the whole set, and it's terrible. So, and you're really discouraged from splashing. So average, this is going to be a 5 mana 5/5. But if you can find any of the shock lands or any of the bonus sheet cards, then you can do more. Not all the bonus sheet cards are playable. Not all the shock lands are going to be on color. But I'll take shock lands that are just green and play them in my green deck because of the number of cards that say X differently named lands you control. So it's not a free thing. There are a lot of rare non-basics, but they're all rares. I will play 1 copy of the common non-basic land. That's all. I don't ever want the second copy. It's just you will lose a game for having 2 copies of the non-basic land. But if I'm splashing 1 color and have some rare lands, this is a 6. And that's going to happen fairly often in the Landers deck. I don't want to be paying 5 mana for this, but with the Lander, if I can make a Lander on turn 2, crack it on turn 3, then on turn 4, I have 5 land or 3 land types, then I get to cast this on turn 4, and I'm pretty happy about that. Also, if I'm drawing enough cards and have a bunch of different lands in play, then I can cast multiples of these in the same turn. It's very cool. I need to drop this. It's just harder. We're dropping this to a 4 and making the effort high. So, Fungal Colossus, I gave it a 4 average with a floor of 4 and a ceiling of 6 and high effort. I'm realizing I was a little blinded by how powerful all the green cards seem, and I may have given a few of them too high a rating. Splashing is discouraged. Yes. Just on the nature of splashing in green, you should never splash something unless it costs 5 mana in this set. Like, landers are the only reliable fixing in the set. There's a few unreliable sources of fixing, but you can reliably fix with landers, but don't assume you can crack a lander before turn 4. If you build your deck around it, you might be able to crack a lander before turn 4, but landers are strong because they build up and you can crack them and crack them and crack them, and you have to find the time to do that. So yes, you have unlimited access to other colors after turn 5. All right, up next we have Galactic Wayfarer. It's just good. 2 and a green for a 3/3 human scout. When this creature enters, create a lander token. Simple, powerful. Landers are just worth a card. So you can look at it, it's like 3 mana 3/3 investigate, but it ramps. So the floor of this is if you're not a Landers deck, this is just a good enough card. If you play this and make a Lander, you are not guaranteed time to crack that Lander, so it is just a 4. But the ceiling of 6 is if you are a dedicated Landers deck, if you care about ramping or fixing. This is one of green's better 3-drops, love to see it. And there's a lot of really good 3-drops. Nodon, there's a lot of fixing, but it's expensive in terms of the time it takes. Gene Pollinator, green for a 1/2 artifact creature robot insect with tap an untapped permanent you control, add 1 mana of any color. The untapped permanent you control is not free, and this does ramp you, but you'll find that most often what you're tapping to fix your mana is a lander. So if you have a deck full of 1-drops, then this will let you play an initial 1-drop. If you need fixing, this will generate the fixing. And if you're good enough at making landers early, but not good at cracking them, then the Gene Pollinator will do good work for you. There are enough things that use that value 1-drops that I'm happy to just play this as a creature, and it's a good little creature. But it's not that strong. It's in other sets this would have been very busted, but rectangles aren't free. You don't have a lot of things just hanging out in play, at least until later in the game. And then you have a lot of things hanging out in play, and this will make mana for free every time, but you have to want to be a deck that uses that mana. So I gave the Pollinator medium effort and a pretty wide range of scores because it matters how good you are at making those other permanents and what you're casting after it. Overall, I gave Gene Pollinator a 4 with a floor of 3, ceiling of 6, medium effort. All right, up next, Germinating Worm. 4 and a green for a 5/5. When this creature enters, you gain 2 life, warp for 1 and a green. So 7 mana, gain 4 life for your 5/5. Not great, but it's still a 5/5. A 5 mana 5/5 that gains 2 life is just pretty good. You'll find that 5-drops are really good in general in this format. So it's a solid body, but it's just a body. And if you can get extra value out of this warp, if you've got a few space stations, or if you really just value creatures coming into play, if warp is worth more than just 2 life to you, then the card's going to be a 6. That's not an easy thing to do or even a common thing, so I gave it a 4 average. Germinating Worm, 4 average, floor 4, ceiling of 6, medium effort. This is a really good station captain. This is one of the better ways to station in general. Green just doesn't have a lot of crazy stations, but if I have stations, if I'm green-white and I have a bunch of white stations or a bunch of the black stations, I'm going to be really happy to play a few copies of this card. Oof. This one's a doozy. So Glacier Godma is a incredibly powerful payoff for the Landers deck. 5 green for a 6/6 trample. When this creature enters, create a lander token, and landfall. Whenever a land you control enters, creatures you control get +1/+1 and gain vigilance and haste until end of turn. So you can play this on turn 7 and then turn 8 swing the team sideways. On turn 8, or just when you have 8 mana, you play this for 7. It gives itself haste and vigilance. So you play this and it's a 7/7 trample, haste, vigilance. You hit for 7, grow your whole team, and also station. It gives your whole team vigilance and haste. Every creature, once this resolves, every creature for the rest of the game has haste and vigilance. Suddenly it's trivially easy to station your spacecraft. And if you are a lander deck and you've just been building up landers, then you can crack this 4 times in a turn. You don't even have to activate it. You can just attack with it, and your opponent can't block anything for fear of you cracking your landers. This is green's finisher of choice. It is incredibly strong. I'm going to go ahead and raise the ceiling, because if you have enough landers, it's very good. But this is really powerful. Every color has an uncommon 6 or 7 mana finisher in this vein, something like this. Green's is the best by a wide margin and is kind of annoying. But yeah, love this card. If you are a ramp deck of any kind or a lander deck, you want this. Otherwise, I mean, the counters deck doesn't really care about this card unless you have a lot of the white token makers. But in the landfall decks, it's incredibly powerful. Gave it a 6 average, floor of 4. A lot of decks just can't cast it. Ceiling of 7 and low effort overall. This one gave me pause a bit. So Harmonious Grove Strider, 3 green for a star with ward 2. This creature's power and toughness are each equal to the number of lands you control. You have to evaluate this one separately. It's a 5 mana 5/5 usually, and it's 5 mana 5/5 ward 2 is okay. And there are a lot of creatures in this format that just kind of grow over time as you play your lands. If you have the creature ramp, then it might be a 4/4, which is still fine. And your opponent does have to take the whole turn to deal with it. It would be higher in other sets. There's just a lot of competition for 5 mana monsters in green. But it gets huge. And it gets out of the size that people can kill pretty fast. Very strong, but kind of replaceable. I have too many floors too high. We lowered the floor to a 4. But I gave the Grove Strider 5 average, floor of 4, ceiling of 6, medium effort. Really cool card. Ooh, I like this one. Hemosymbic Might. Is Symbic an abbreviated way to say symbiotic? Is that an existing word, or did they just name it like that? Anyway, Hemosymbic Might. Green, 1 green for a 1/1. Whenever this creature becomes tapped, another target creature you control gets +X/+X until end of turn, where X is this creature's power. As an aside, I take issue with green having the best large creatures, the best 2-drops, and the best 1-drops all at the same time. This one is work. It doesn't do anything alone. It doesn't attack very well. But what it does do is turn every +1/+1 counter into 2 +1/+1 counters on a 1-drop. So if you put a counter on it and then attack with another 2/2, you're attacking for 4. But you also get to station a space station with it, or tap it to make mana with the other 1-drop and grow something at instant speed. So I do think if you have a Hemosymbic Might or 2 Hemosymbic Mites, and if you have a Gene Pollinator or 2 Gene Pollinators, they both raise each other because it happens so fast. And being able to divvy out that +X/+X is very powerful. It turns all of your, like, it makes all your counters a little bit better. It makes all your equipment a little bit better. But you have to have those things before I'm happy to play with this. It doesn't seem like a tall ask, but having other creatures, a way to tap this and a way to grow this is not trivial. So I gave it a 4 average with a floor of 3 and a ceiling of 6, high effort. This just doesn't attack for free. You don't get to count on the attack for this to trigger it. But if you have other ways to trigger it, it gets really out of hand quickly. So warp is, I should explain warp. Warp is you pay the warp cost and it comes into play, and then at the end step, it leaves the battlefield into its own special form of exile, kind of like adventure, and then you can cast it for its mana cost later. On a later turn. So if you it does have to be in play to finish warping, but it's like I love the flavor of warp because it's like you're on a space station, suddenly worm, oh my god, how did I get here? And worm's gone, but you know it's there, you know it'll come back. Okay, next, Ice Cave Crasher. 3 and a green for a 4/4 creature beast with trample and landfall. Whenever a land you control enters, this creature gets +1/+0 until end of turn. It's a 4 mana 4/4. It attacks as a 5/4. If you have landers, the threat of activation means that it's very hard to block. But it's so hard to keep the landers up once you get to 5 mana. At 5 mana, you're going to want to be casting spells. So I gave it a 4 average with a floor of 4 and a ceiling of 5. There's just so much competition for the role of 4 and 5 mana efficient beaters. It's a good card, don't be upset if you play it, but you want things that aid you more. The 4 drops green has available are very strong. There are no cards that double power, Carl, but there's a lot of cards that give double strike. Intrepid Tenderfoot, very powerful 2-drop. 1 and a green for a 2/2 insect citizen with 3, not 3 and tap, just 3. Put a +1/+1 counter on this creature, activate only as a sorcery. This is a good 2-drop early that can get out of hand quickly, and I need to lower this. You're just not actually going to have time to activate this very often. If the board stalls out enough for you to start growing this, then you're probably in good shape anyway, and you have a lot to do with that mana. But 1 extra power makes a big difference whether you're stationing or attacking. I'm usually going to want to play this as a 2 mana 2/2 that I activate once. So I gave it a 4 average with a floor of 3, ceiling of 5, low effort. There's very good 2-drops in green. The reason that I like it so much is that if your opponent plays a 2 mana 2/3 or a 3 mana 2/3, which there's a lot of 2/3s in the set, being able to activate this once and then attack through those for the rest of the turns or block them reliably is what green needs to do. It's what green wants to be doing. And it is a nice mana sink when you have a lot of mana, which can happen with all of the landers. Ooh, up next, Larval Scoutlander. out of all of the vehicles, out of all of the spacecraft, this is the one that returns its value up front. So 2 and a green for a artifact spacecraft. When this spacecraft enters, you may sacrifice a land or lander. If you do, search your library for up to 2 basic land cards, put them onto the battlefield tapped, then shuffle. So most of the time, you can think of this as 3 mana, get a land. If you sack a lander, you're just doubling what that lander gives you. But getting 2 landfall triggers at the same time is relevant for enough cards that I'm almost always happy to play this in green, and I'm happy to pick it high in green. There's a lot of things that reward you for just having a spacecraft in play, but most of the spacecraft come down so late that it doesn't matter. Being able to only pay 3 mana for your spacecraft means that you will actually be able to crew it on subsequent turns. You can crew it later. It's much easier to find time to station a spacecraft earlier in the game in this format than it is later in the game. Later in the game, it's going to make combat and clogged boards much more difficult. But I like this lander. I'll take it pretty high, and especially because the one deck that does want to splash kind of early is spacecraft decks. In any combination of colors. So I do think that this is one of the better spacecraft available. I gave it a 6 average with a floor of 3. That's if you're never going to station it, and a ceiling of 6 with low effort, because it's usually going to play near that ceiling. Love the card. It's just, there's not a lot of spacecraft that you feel comfortable playing regardless of whether or not you can station it, and the Scoutlander is one of the only ones. You can vary. That's a great question. Beard says, how frequently can you have a lander in play for turn 3 in the name of curving out? It is really easy to have a lander in play on turn 3. It is very difficult to crack a lander before turn 3. Turn 4 is the easiest. You can build your deck to guarantee a turn 4 lander, but turn 2, turn 3, like a lot of the 3 drops make landers, and a few of the 2 drops make landers. And I think only one drop makes landers reliably. There's the 2/2 that dies into a lander, but there's a sorcery that makes a lander. Lash Whip Predator. I had to keep going back to this one. 4 green for a 5/7 plant beast with reach, and this spell costs 2 less to cast if your opponent controls 3 or more creatures. Let's talk about 6 drops. So in green's creatures tend to be better than other colors. That's what green does. They get to be bigger, not better, just bigger. So there's a fundamental problem that we've run into in past limited sets when your opponent has a lot of removal, where you'll tap out for a 6 drop or a 5 drop or even a 4 drop, and then your opponent just kills it and also furthers their board state. And that's why most of the 6 drops we see will end up having pretty low ratings if they don't generate value when they come into play. But when your opponent is snowballing out of control, when they have the perfect curve out, that's when the Lash Whip Predator is going to save you and keep you alive. And when they're not doing that, then it's okay paying 6 mana for a 5/7. So this is a card that lets you win a game you would otherwise be losing, because if it does the normal green thing of just being a large creature you pay 6 mana for on turn 6 because the game is relatively even, it's going to feel really good. And when your opponent has curved out and is just beating you down, then you get to play this on turn 4, and they can't attack through it. They have to have a removal spell. So if their deck is perfect and they really do just turn 5 kill your turn 4 play, then you'll probably lose anyway. But this is one of the few things that can turn around a game you're otherwise losing. So I gave it a 5 average with a floor of 4 and a ceiling of 6, medium effort. That ceiling of 6, you really won this in a deck when you're going to struggle when your opponent curves out. If you don't have great 2 mana or 1 mana plays, or even great 3 mana plays, then the Predator, Lash Whip Predator is what you want. Up next, Miltstrider Eulogist. 2 and a green for a 3/3 insect soldier. Whenever a creature you control dies with a +1/+1 counter, whenever a creature you control with a +1/+1 counter on it dies, draw a card. It's really good in this format. There's just so many incidental counters lying around. You do need to get a counter onto it. If you can get a counter onto it, I'm gonna go ahead and drop the 4. If you can get a counter onto it, then it replaces itself when it dies. You'll play a 3 mana 3/3 that draws a card on death every time. If you can grow it if you have a board full of things, then it's so strong. And the way that green-white tends to play in this format is the 2-mana 2/2s often have counters. So you can play your 2-mana 2/2 with, or 2-mana 1/1 with ++1 counter, and your opponent plays their 2-mana 2/2, then you play Eulogist Attack. They can't block with their 2/2 because you'll draw a card, and they can't attack with your 2/2 because you've got the Eulogist. And then you get to just start growing out of control, and it generates a lot of card advantage. I should probably raise the effort value, but I'll leave it at medium for now. I gave it an average of 5 with a floor of 4 and a ceiling of 7 and medium effort required to bridge that gap. Up next, Melt Strider's Gear. 1 green for an artifact equipment. When this equipment enters, attach a target creature you control. Equipped creature gets +2/+1 and has reach, and equip 5. Equip 5 is prohibitively difficult. Green doesn't care enough about having artifacts, and green already has so many good things with reach, I wouldn't really bother most of the time. But some decks will need it. It's a good sideboard card. Overall, I'm not going to include it main deck, but it's good against enough blue decks that I'll put it in the sideboard, and the lander decks can afford to pay this cost later. If I am a green-blue deck and I have some of the blue artifact payoffs, or a green-black deck and I have some of the black artifacts payoffs, I'll still play it. I'm just never going to be too happy about it. I gave it an average score of a 3, floor of 2, ceiling of 4, and medium effort required. Up next, Melt Strider's Resolve. 1 green for an enchantment aura, enchant creature you control. When this creature enters, enchanted creature fights up to 1 target creature an opponent controls. Enchanted creature gets +0/+2 and can't be blocked by more than 1 creature. It's not 1 and a green, it's just a green mana. So a green mana fight is always almost good enough. Being able to kill anything for 1 mana is too good, but killing anything that's smaller than your creature is pretty great. And there's enough death touch creatures available that this lets survive. Like, we have a 2-mana 2/2 death touch in green, and if I put the Melt Strider's Resolve on it, I get to kill a 3/3 and my creature stays alive. +2 toughness and can't be blocked by more than 1 creature is very relevant text. I know, Carl. Carl says, I don't know why green has so much good removal, but okay. Like, usually green's removal is very weak to make up for the fact that its creatures are so strong, but it has fantastic removal, fantastic creatures, great card advantage, one of the only powerful pieces of synergy. Green's very good. I'm a little upset by how much better it seems than some of these other colors. Melt Strider's Resolve, great removal spell. You do need other cards to go with it. You need other creatures. You can have those creatures. You have to limit the total number of fights and bites you play in this format, but Melt Strider's Resolve is a great removal spell. I gave it a 5 average with a floor of 4 and a ceiling of 5. Floor is technically lower, but I'm assuming you have access to creatures if you're playing green. Pull Through the West. This is the 1 graveyard payoff in green. 3 green for a sorcery. Return up to 2 target non-land permanent cards from your graveyard to your hand. Then return up to 2 target land cards from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped. So you have to be milling yourself to get the most value out of this card. But if you get to put 2 lands into play, trigger 2 landfall abilities, and pick up 2 relevant cards all at the same time, it's going to be very hard to beat. Often the lands aren't going to matter, but the fact that you just picked up 2 expensive spells makes the lands matter. This is one of the reasons to do the graveyard thing. You'll need a lot of surveil and self-mill. You don't even need a lot. You need a fair amount. That's why I gave it a medium effort. So Pull Through the West has average 5 with a floor of 3, ceiling of 7, and medium effort required to bridge that gap. Sammy's Curiosity. This is the Hallmark Lander card. 1 green mana for a sorcery, gain 2 life, create a lander token. So this is get a land spread out over 2 turns. If you play this on turn 1, you're usually going to be able to search up a land, but you're okay playing this pretty late in the game as well. It's just 3 mana, gain 2 life, get a land, but spread out over multiple turns. As long as you have need of lands, you like this card. This is also one of the few green ways to fix mana early reliably. So if you're splashing a little bit, then you get to play this card, and this card gets a lot better. However, if you time to sack the lander is not free, so you, by running a few copies of this card, if you're playing 3 copies of Sammy's Curiosity, you are ramping, but you are giving up your 2-drop and or your 3-drop to play the Curiosity. So make sure your deck wants to do that, because the 3-drops are really just not as strong as the 4-drops in this format. The 4-drops are all a little absurd, so skipping to 4 is okay, but make sure your deck is built to accommodate that. So I think this is my highest rated green card, and that's a pretty high bar. So Siege Ship Agrarian, 3 and a green for a 3/3. Whenever this creature becomes tapped, create a lander token. Landfall. Whenever a land you control enters, put a +1/+1 counter on this creature. So this passively grows massive and generates value on turn, like, it immediately becomes a 4/4, which is a 4 mana at 4, and this is the only repeatable way to create landers outside of rares. So you do want stations. You need to be able to tap this reliably. There are a lot of ways to get the lander the turn this comes down, which means it's very likely to attack as a 5/5 the turn after it comes in. Just an incredibly powerful card. I gave it a it's lower effort. I need to lower the effort on this. That's just a typo. You want some stations or ways to tap this, even if you attack with it. So if you have to attack with it on turn 5, you play this turn 4, turn 5, play a land, it's a 4/4, and then attack, then it makes the lander before blocks. So you get to make it a 5/5 before it's dealt the damage. And you don't have to. Just the threat of activation alone makes it tough to block. If you have no other stations or landers, it's still a 6, because it attacks as a 5/5. They have to deal with it right away. It's just tough to play it without any stations or tappers. You want this to be something that generates lander right away. There's also a lot of ways to untap things. There's 2 ways to untap things that are common, but they're good. There's a blue 3/2 we talked about yesterday. When it becomes tapped, you untap another target permanent. This it's not limited to making 1 lander a turn, and it's not limited to cracking 1 lander a turn. If this goes unchecked, it will very quickly become large and take all the lands out of your decks. Very powerful. Siege Ship Impact. 1 and a green for an instant. Destroy target artifact or enchantment. If its mana value is 2 or less, create a lander. This enchant is good enough in this set. There's 60 artifacts, and there's only like 8 enchantments, but there's 4 different aura-based removal spells and 2 different rings, things that exile until they leave play. So the best way to deal with most of Green's creatures, because Green's creatures are all either out of range of a lot of the burn spells or quickly become out of range of the burn spells. So the best way to deal with them is going to be the blue cards that lock a creature down or gain control of them, or the white cards that exile something until they leave play. And green just has, at 2 mana, the ability to undo that and generate value. And generate a lander, which is something that green always wants to do. So if you hit your opponent's lander with this on turn 2, totally fine. Make a lander, gain some value. If you hit your opponent's removal spell, then it's just doing their job anyway. This is as good as or better than many of the removal spells available in this format. And there's a lot of good removal spells in this format. I gave Siege Ship Impact a 5 average with a floor of 4, ceiling of 6, and just medium effort. It just is about how well you use the lander and how much other removal spells you have. I should probably lower that effort, but it's okay for now. Up next, Shattered Wings. 2 and a green for a sorcery with destroy target artifact, enchantment, or creature with flying. Surveil 1. This is solid removal. It's situational. Every deck has either artifacts, enchantments, or flyers, so every deck will have a target. It's just a slightly lower rating than usual because of how many good options green has for dealing with everybody's game plans. But I'll still play this in green. Like, I'd rather have Siege Ship Impact, but I'll happily play a Shattered Wings. It's sorcery speed, and it's still strong. Being sorcery speed hurts it a little. So if your deck can naturally deal with flyers well enough, then you can handle most of the artifacts things already. But if you can't, pick it up, pick it high. I gave it a 4 average with a floor of 3, ceiling of 5, and medium effort. All right, up next, Sky Stinger. 2 and a green for a 3/3 insect warrior with reach. Whenever this creature blocks creature with flying, this creature gets +5/+0 until end of turn. It's a nifty defensive creature, deals with all the flyers pretty effectively, and it's efficient. It's a 3 mana 3/3. It still attacks pretty well. So I gave it a 4 average with a floor of 3, ceiling of 5. If your deck is defensive, if you need to block stations or deal with large flyers in the air, go ahead and run it. The 3 drops in green tend to be specific to the game plan. So the 3 mana 3/3 that makes a lander might be better for you. The 3 mana 3/3 that blocks really well is good if you're very controlling. The 3 mana 3/3 that draws a card on counters when creatures with counters die is obviously very good in the counters deck. But they all have their homes. And if you have to play a card that is in the wrong home, your 3 mana 3/3 is not going to be too upset about it. I don't understand why all of green's on game plan cards are also 3 mana 3/3s with upside in addition to being on plan, where like other colors have a 3 mana 2/3 with no keywords, and I don't understand why they decided to bump green up, but it's okay. Tapestry Warden. 3 and a green for a 3/4 robot soldier with vigilance. Each creature you control with toughness greater than its power assigns combat damage equal to its toughness rather than its power. Each creature you control with toughness greater than its power stations permanents using its toughness rather than its power. So this is a 4 mana 4/4 with vigilance, and it gives a lot of marginal boosts, but not that many to green cards. It gives +1/+0 to a lot of cards, and +2/+0 to a few cards. Overall, it's a 4 mana 4/4 with upside and vigilance. Vigilance is just worth it. Vigilance is a powerful keyword in this set, so I love that vigilance is a powerful keyword in this set. So a 4 mana 4/4 with vigilance that gives slight buffs to other creatures is a good thing to have in this set. There's not a lot of creatures that it buffs. There's a few different 1/2s and a few different 1/3s. Not a lot of 3/4s or 2/4s. Black has a few 2/4s that are really happy to receive this buff, though. Overall, I gave it an average of 5 with a floor of 4 and a ceiling of 6, medium effort. It's going to be a 6 when it's pumping a bunch of other creatures. Usually it's a 5 because that's what I would give to a 4 mana 4/4 vigilance in the set. Blue does have a few bigger butts. The boosts that it gives are nice, but not overpowered. Like, not too crazy. All right, up next, Thawbringer. 2 and a green for a 4/2 insect scout. When this creature enters or dies, surveil 1. Surveil is not inherently valuable in every deck. Well, surveil is always good, but 2 toughness is it's a downside. This will trade down when you're trying to station vehicles or attack. By clearing all their blockers is very good. Surveilling can be worth a whole card, in which case a 3 mana creature that trades down with a 2 or 1 mana creature is good enough. But that's only when you really value that surveil, and a lot of decks don't need to value the surveil. So I gave it a 4 average with a floor of 3, ceiling of 5. In the graveyard deck, when I really want that surveil, or I need a creature that will trade up or bite really well, I want the Thawbringer. But often I'm just not that excited paying 3 mana for a creature that trades down so often. This is great for stationing vehicles. If you want to station your spacecraft, it's very good.